Hello, Waxers, and welcome to Wax and Lyrical with Mains and Duts. I'm your host, Mains, and my colleague who believes you cannot be a superhero if you were born on planet Earth. It's Mr. Neil Dutton. How are we, Neil?
Hello there.
The controversial text conversation we had before, I put forward a statement that I saw on Twitter. The Flash could be categorised as the most powerful superhero on the planet. You suggested that because he was born by an accident, as he occurred by an accident, he wasn't a superhero, which led us down a path of suggesting that only Thor and Superman were actually superheroes.
There are only superheroes on our planet. I say Thor is obviously a great warrior in, the halls of Asgard. And I was getting mixed up. Is he Kal-El?
He's Kal-El, I think.
He's Kal-El, yeah. He's probably,
boring, but anyway.
He's boring. And, if he'd been able to walk the streets of Krypton, for all we know, might have been a weakling pussy.
Probably would have been bullied, given the fact that he's a bad loser with no personality.
Yeah, but the powers of Earth's sun give him his powers, the radiation. So because he's not born in our universe and we can't replicate his powers, he's a superhero, whereas Flash, Spider-Man, the Hulk are accidental heroes, but heroes nonetheless.
Love it, Dutton, love it. If you agree with Neil, tweet him at ndutton13, or if you agree with me that it's quite a controversial point of view, and I'm pretty sure that if you are a hero and super, then you are a superhero. I can understand that a mutant concept, but the Spider-Man not being a superhero is lost on me. Then speak to me at Mainsy7.
But I think we can agree that Batman, Green Arrow, Atom, and Iron Man are not superheroes.
They're vigilantes, Dutton.
Yeah.
Rich, powerful vigilantes, but vigilantes nonetheless.
Yeah, their superpower is being loaded.
Loaded, yeah. Their superpower is being incredibly rich, so they were able to learn cool moves and stuff. Dutton, big week this week. We're going NFL heavy, and we're starting our NFL previews with the NFC North. Not really reason for that other than we got Kevin Patra from around the NFL as an interview, so it felt like a perfect place to start.
And plus, as well, North being up, so it goes round the clock.
And controversially, the exact opposite of what the guys on Gridiron have done. If they've started on the South and worked, I assume are going to work their way up.
I really don't want to hear about that sparkling water drinking, dark chocolate eating podcast.
Although I did like the drunk or partially drunk, as in they had one can of Guinness each in an O'Neill's. Ooh, that must have been original last week. It was good. Although I do believe they went to the Dutton School of podcasting, as Ollie seemed to forget that he had to hold the microphone next to his mouth when he was talking.
Also, as well, we'll give these some pub, to be honest. Will did get a chance to speak with money man Mr. Andrew Luck and ask him a question that I sent and it was, you're on your own 20-yard line, you're down by 4 points in the Super Bowl, 1 minute and 30 seconds to go. What two players in NFL history do you want in your offense? And Andrew Luck said T.Y. Hilton and Dwayne Allen. To be fair, I've using the Rotoviz screener app, I've looked at how many times Andrew Luck has actually been down by 4 in the fourth quarter with 1.5 minutes to go, and it's not very often, so he probably doesn't know any better.
I love Will and Ollie, and they do an absolutely amazing job, and you get to do some brilliant interviews, and you get to work for Talk Sport, and Ollie gets to laugh at Agent Durham and whatever, but I don't envy Will having to interview players. I really don't, because that is a really interesting question. And he gave a bollocks answer. Sorry, it was bollocks. And I don't care if that gets us one of them ratings on the podcast. That is a disgraceful answer. And I know what you're trying to do, Andrew, but it's boring and uninteresting. And it's why a multitude of reasons that I'm waxing lyrical, we don't interview players, because they're not interesting.
I mean, one could point out that, if he really wanted Dwayne Allen in this situation, why was he only targeted 29 times last season? But obviously Luck was injured for part of that, so.
Yeah, I said, the guys do a wonderful job, and I don't envy them, because you can literally hear Will just go, okay, thanks, Andrew. That was funny. Yeah, brilliant.
Have a shave. No, I was talking to you.
You were talking to me. He's gone for the Will Gavin Ginger Beard concept at the moment. So let's get on with the NFC North. We're going to go through each team. Got the high octane question to ask. We're going to look at their over under. We're actually going to go into a bit of depth on the schedule. Then we're going to do Dutton's fantasy studs and fantasy duds.
Yeah, one player from each team who you should probably look to target, and one player that you really shouldn't.
And don't get me wrong, there is a possibility in the fantasy studs you're going to get the 1998 Jimmy Hill. Which player should we look out for here, Jimmy? And he said Ronaldo, as in fat Ronaldo, not the crying Ronaldo. But that doesn't matter because you still got to pick him, and there may be occasions where you're going to have to. So let's get it started, Dutton, with the Chicago Bears. The question is, Dutton, how big a loss is Adam Gase in this situation?
Well, he's a huge loss. I mean, most Bears fans would probably have thought he was only really on a year rental anyway, because he was attracting head coaching buzz before he took the Bears job. He's one of the, well, probably, the way he ran his system of keeping the ball out of Jay Cutler's hands, probably managed Cutler better than any other offensive coordinator. So as a result, the Bears didn't go out of their way to beat themselves too much last year. So it is going to be a big loss.
I look at it now and I'm thinking, like, if I'm a Bears fan, someone finally reined Jay in. I've stopped having to, I've go into counselling and shaking in a room when Jay's on the field. And then someone's taking him away. And now I have no idea if we're going to go back to fast and loose Jay, which I don't want any part of.
One big difference that I have noticed going back and watching some game film is he plays his best ball when he's rolled his sleeves up. So when he's got, his Under Armour rolled up to his elbows, the come on boys, let's go for it. He actually looks quite good. When his sleeves are down, that's when he turns into bad Jay. I'm just saying. Just saying.
I'll keep an eye out for that one, so I'll be tweeting that out next year. Jay's going to be on a run here. He's got his sleeves rolled up. So let's look at the over under. Vegas very rarely gets this wrong. So they want you to bet both sides, obviously, and it's 7.5. Done. Road schedule, obviously they play the NFC North, so we won't go into that. The road schedule outside of the division is Texans, Cowboys, Colts, Bucks, and Giants in that order. And the home schedule is Eagles, Jags, Titans, 49ers, and Washington. I give you 7.5, Dutton.
7.5. I mean, you look at the outer division teams on the road.
It calls into question what you think of the AFC South, really. They play that division this year. They've got Colts and Texans on the road. They also play the Cowboys. How good do you think they're going to be? Yeah. NFC East, AFC South, it's a question of how good you think those divisions are. Depends on what they're going to do. But they're probably, you would expect, possibly be under 500 in the division itself, given the fact that the Vikings and the Packers are probably better than them. Yeah,
I'm going to take the under. This team's defense has got better. It's got some wonderful pieces on it. Vic Fangio is a master of his craft, but I don't trust the offense that much. So I don't think they're going to have to try and probably play catch up and get into some shootouts, and that's when you don't want Cutler with his hand on the trigger. So I'm going to regrettably take the under.
Yeah, I think I'm going to take a 6 and 10, 7-9 style season. Don't I agree with you there? I think they're an emergingly better team. The record may not show it this year. I know there's a lot of naysayers about John Fox, but I think he's a very good coach in certain situations, of which this is one of them. He would be a coach that I would want to try and build this team up. I have concerns on the offense myself. I have concerns about what Jay Cutler will do. And the defense may have got better, but it's not great. So I'm also going the under here. Dutton, who is the fantasy stud for the Chicago Bears?
Well, assuming he can stay fit, which has been a big question mark the last few years, it's Alshon Jeffrey. Probably not going to get a new deal, so he's going to have to play under the franchise tag. I did read somewhere that people within the Chicago organization are not exactly enamored with his inability to stay healthy. So maybe he is playing, for a job, maybe not with the Bears. So he'll look forward to, Washington overpaying for him next year. But
absolutely, Dutton, absolutely.
Yeah, but if he's on the field, he's an absolute beast. They've lost Martellus Bennett. The other receiver is Kevin White. He's a big question mark. We don't know. Not too sure about the ground game. So yeah, he should see a healthy amount of targets, especially if they have to play catch up.
Fantasy dud, Dutton.
Fantasy dud. This was called very early on by a friend of the show, Mike Clay. Very early this off-season. It's Jeremy Langford. And obviously he's got big shoes to fill with Matt Forte now with the New York Jets. But Langford had a good run last season. He had quite a few games where he scored touchdowns. I think it was 4 consecutive games. These masked the fact that he was averaging just over 3 yards a carry. So he's going to have to get an awful lot of volume to be worth the gamble. We know that the Bears like Kadeem Carey, and they've got Jordan Howard, who's a rookie. It's a mess at running back. It's one of those situations that you should really avoid.
Chicago Bears, over under 7.5. Me and Neil both picked the under. Not too sure on the team. Fantasy stud Alshon Jeffrey, soon to be NFC East wide receiver. If we assume he's not getting a new contract, and fantasy dud is Jeremy Langford. We're not convinced. We're not convinced. So Dalton, let's move on. Let's talk Detroit Lions. The main question for me, Dalton, is there's no Megatron now. Will the fact that Stafford won't focus on him as much help or hinder the offense?
I think it could help it. I mean, their offense last year, when Jim Bob Cooter became offensive coordinator, basically Cooter made the field smaller. Matt Stafford's average depth of target, that is, how far down the field he threw, it dropped to 6.6 yards. That's Alex Smith-esque. It basically got the ball out of his hand quicker to playmakers to do their thing and basically rely on a lot of yak. So it was quick hitting. It was almost like an extension of the run game, which isn't the best and hasn't been since Barry Sanders left, let's be honest. So instead of saying, we're not going to run the ball, but what we'll do, we'll have really, really quick passes. So that's essentially a long run game. Golden Tate has shown, not a big sample size, but when Calvin Johnson has been missing or ineffective, he can really shoulder the load. So he could easily pace the NFC in receptions this year. They just won't be very long ones. I think the offense is, without Megatron, can be functional. It just won't be particularly exciting.
I just looked at it. If you take the opposite of the Chicago Bears, the Lions held on to their offensive coordinator. The Stafford got a level of comfort towards the end of the season. They played really well as a unit, considering we'd slagged them off early on in the season. That focus will really help, and I think I'm with you. I think that the Megatron thing, it gives them the sure passing option more of a chance to get going. You don't have to think, I'm not getting the ball to Megatron enough.
And also as well, I mean, you think about it, if you're a defensive coach and you're playing the Detroit Lions, what's your game plan? They're going to look for Megatron now. Is it going to be a Golden Tate day, a Marvin Jones day? Is Ebron going to be featured? Are they going to try and run the ball? Now you just literally, you got to go back to the book and say, go back to the tape and say, we can't find what they want to do because all they've done is chuck it to Megatron, even if he's triple covered for the last 8 years.
Very true. Vegas number for the Detroit Lions is 7. Road games against Colts, Texans, Saints, Giants, and Cowboys. Home games against Titans, Eagles, the LA Rams, Washington, and the Jacksonville Jaguars. 7, Dutton, what say you?
I'm going to take the over.
Okay, Dutton, talk me through the over.
Well, I just think, I think the offense is going to be okay. They've got a good defense. They've got some good pieces. Ziggy Ansah is playing for a big deal. Terrell Austin, has been a very good defensive coach. You look at those games. I mean, they're gonna welcome the Titans, who are crap. The Rams, who are crap. We don't know what Washington are going to be this year. The Skins don't have a record of stringing consistency together. So,
no arguments here, Dutton. No arguments here.
And the Jags, again, we don't know. So you look. I mean, I ignored the Eagles then because, they absolutely shellacked us on Thanksgiving, and I'd really rather not think about it again. You could look at them; they're out of division. They could easily win all 5 of those games. So there's 5. I mean, then they beat the Giants, beat the Saints, who are trash. And then all they need to do is pick up a couple of wins in division, and they're in the hunt.
I think I understand what you're saying. I look at it and I think, for me, they're the weakest team in the division. I look and think, I understand what you're saying, but if I play devil's advocate, if the Rams have a good day on defense, that could be a long day for Stafford and company. The Jags could put up a lot of points. The Saints are trash, but it is on the road. Get beat by the Cowboys, get beat by the Colts. I might go the other way. I'm looking at 6-10. I think this is the worst team in the division. I'm not saying this is a horrible division, far from it. But I think this is the worst team. I think the ceiling's 8-8 for the team, but I'm going to pick 6-10.
Okay.
Fantasy stud Dutton, who is it on the Detroit Lions?
Well, but Benman, this is a team, as I say, that is used to having one of the star wide receivers of fantasy football, and Calvin Johnson. I think Golden Tate is going to, as I say, he could easily have the most receptions of any wide receiver in the NFC, because they're going to have, it's going to be short, it's going to be out of Stafford's hand quick, and they're going to rely on him to do his thing with the yak. He could easily have 100 catches or more. The big knock on Golden Tate is he doesn't score enough touchdowns. I think 2 of his touchdowns last year came from 2 yards out or shorter. So it's all very well if he gets 110 catches for, let's be generous, 1,100 yards and 2 touchdowns. That's not paying the bills. But if he can get in the end zone a bit more, then yeah, he could be wide receiver 2, high wide receiver 2. And if he goes crackers a la his former teammate Doug Baldwin, there's a wide receiver 1.
Fantasy dud Dutton.
Fantasy dud, and I was listening to the Rotor World podcast with Josh Norris and Evan Silver, and it got me thinking. Evan said he doesn't want any part of the Detroit backfield, and that includes Amir Abdullah. As we know, he struggled a bit as a rookie. They didn't try and run the ball, but then in the time of Kuta, he was averaging, I think he averaged 4.5 yards a carry, and he was getting up to around 60, 70 rushing yards after Kuta, where they weren't really trying to run the ball. The problem is, I say, he's had a shoulder problem. Running backs, it's an instinctive thing. You don't want to hit with the shoulder, so we don't know if he's don't know how much work he's going to get. He'll probably be the lead back, but they've got Zach Zenner or Stephen Ridley who are going to be the big backs. So that's the goal line work, that's your short yardage touchdown situations. They've got Theo Riddick, who's almost going to be, like a slot receiver. So he's going to take away a lot of the passing downs. So you're saying Amir Abdullah will probably get his yards. He could easily rush 1,000 yards. That's not beyond the realm of possibility. But unless he starts taking touchdowns from 60 yards out, I don't know when he's going to get into the end zone. So this is similar to the Bears. It's really a situation to avoid.
Detroit Lions, over under 7. You've gone for the over, I've gone for the under. First disagreement on the pod, we like that. Fantasy stud is Mr. Tate, and fantasy dud is Amir Abdullah. Next team, everyone's favourite, the Green Bay Packers. So the big question with the Green Bay Packers was last year's offensive woes just due to the injuries?
Well, it's a fair assumption. I mean, all teams have injuries. They're not allowed to use that as an excuse. They've been told this. They've all got the memo. The injuries are not an excuse. So Baltimore, when we get to you, they're not an excuse. But they just weren't very good. I mean, Aaron Rodgers, we always have this question, Tom Brady is so good because he lifts that no marks he has had up to his level. And they've had some pretty ordinary receivers who've put up some numbers, I'm talking about the likes of, Rashae Caldwell, Jabbar Gaffney, even, let's be honest, Edelman and Amendola are productive. Really? Aaron Rodgers, has had Jordy Nelson for the majority of his run. Didn't have him last year, and we've seen the impact that he had. The teams are like, okay, well, you can throw it at Devontae Adams. He'll give us the ball back himself. So we can put our best man on Randall Cobb. James Jones was getting free early in the season. That stopped. So you have to say it was a misfiring offense. Eddie Lacy potentially thought maybe he'd cracked this whole NFL thing and got fat and comfortable before, without even getting paid beforehand. So, and also, I think there was a lot of confusion about, Mike McCarthy was calling the plays, then he wasn't. Their offensive coordinator wasn't calling the plays. It was the quarterback coach, and then McCarthy took the play calling. It's like, seriously, give it back to McCarthy. Even if he is slightly conservative in his play calling, at least you know where you stand.
Yeah, I mean, we say that, offensive woes. He got to the divisional round of the playoffs. They did okay. I just think that people thought this was going to be a juggernaut, and I think they think that again. And there's just some things just don't quite click at certain times. I know I'm one to hate on Mike McCarthy, and you give me loads of grief for it, but I just look and think, is he in over his head at certain situations?
And the few. It is, it's fair, but I mean, it is, it's 10 years since he's been there, and as good a quarterback as Aaron Rodgers is and has been, as we all know, we all accept this, they've won one Super Bowl, and they've only got to one, and they've been the best team in that division. So it's almost like, Tom Brady's had, the cakewalk division for so long, but then when the real bullets start firing, he steps up. It's almost a bit like occasionally maybe it's too easy for Rodgers, and then when he gets to the playoffs, the windows get smaller. There is the risk of Aaron Rodgers becoming the next generation's Peyton Manning.
Oh, God. Thomas Moore, if you're listening, give us a tweet. That's a big statement, because that will be something that he will not like. I can not argue with it, because it makes perfect sense at the moment. In Vegas, Dutton, Packers are 10.5 road games in Jacksonville against the Falcons, Titans, Washington, and the Eagles. At home to the Giants, the Cowboys, the Colts, the Texans, and the Seahawks.
Over.
This team has got that essence of 12-4. I don't know what you think, Dutton.
Yeah, 12-4, 11-5. Probably no more than that. I don't think we're going 13-3. Because, as I say, I think this is a surprisingly feisty division. That is a nice looking list of visitors to Lambeau. So yeah, they'll go over.
As you said, you look at that Lambeau and you think Giants not very good, Cowboys dome team, Colts dome team, Texans dome team. Seahawks will be a tough game, obviously. They then come to Washington and Philadelphia, nothing really to fear there. Come to Tennessee, nothing to fear there. Falcons, they're okay, I guess. So you think, and they're gonna probably be the best team in this division. So they'll probably at minimum go 4-2 in the division. I'm seeing 12-4. I'm taking the over. Don't it? It's your chance to be Jimmy Hill circa 1998. Give me the fantasy stud on the Green Bay Packers.
Well, it's the man who's coming back from I mean, it's one of those by the dubious criteria. If Aaron Rodgers gets MVP next year, is he technically going to get comeback player of the year as well?
You'd assume so, due to how quote unquote terrible he was last year.
I mean, 31 touchdowns and 8 interceptions. I mean, how does he even have the nerve to cash his checks?
I don't know.
He's Aaron Rodgers. I mean, in the regular season, he's dope. He's absolutely. He's got the NFL on lock, which is a.
Did you just use dope and got the NFL on lock? Never
yeah,
do that again, you old man.
It was a bit of graffiti I saw in Skelmersdale today. Yeah, Diggsy's got Skem on lock, which I sleep. So I don't know what that means. So yeah, he's going to he's going to score points. I mean, if they don't have a run game, then they have to pass the ball 50 times. Great, Rodgers is happy for that. And they've got the weapons back. Jordy Nelson will be back. Hopefully they're going to get Jeff Janis and Jared Abadaris a bit more involved. They've got Jared Cook. So now they've got an athletic tight end as opposed to the lumbering cart horse that is Richard Rodgers. It's hard to look past. Aaron Rodgers makes everything go, and he will make Jordy Nelson a wide receiver 1. He'll make Randall Cobb a wide receiver 2. He'll make Jared Cook a low end tight end 1. He's the spoon that stirs the drink in this team.
Who's the fantasy dud though, Dutton? And I think you've already mentioned it.
Yeah, Devontae Adams. Bless you, Devontae. You've got to hand it to him because he'll drop it if you don't. He's just not very good. He was targeted a lot last year. I think it was 99 targets. He caught about 50 of them, which is pathetic because it wasn't as if they were going way downfield. And he just looked out of his depth. Aaron Rodgers is the type of taskmaster that if he doesn't think you're going to catch it, he's not like Cam Newton. Cam doesn't get put off by someone dropping the ball. He gives them the confidence. He'll go back to him again. Aaron Rodgers doesn't and won't because he can find someone else to do the job.
The Green Bay Packers, 10.5 the over. Both of us are taking it. We're thinking 11-5, 12-4, and probably winners of this division. The fantasy stud is Mr. Aaron Rodgers, obviously, and the fantasy dud is Mr. Devontae Adams, also pretty much obviously. Final team, Dutton, that is the Minnesota Vikings. The question is Teddy Bridgewater the only question on this team?
I don't think he's the only question. He just seems to be the biggest question. They're a good team. They're not particularly flashy. They're not exciting. They run the ball an awful lot. And it's just a question of, are they good enough that they can win with a quarterback who, and this isn't, I'm not being critical in him, he's a bit of a passenger as opposed to, driving the bus.
Spoiler alert, Dutton. We've got Kevin Patra on, and we've already recorded the interview. He talked about how similar the Bengals and the Vikings are. Do you see that comparison? Because Zimmer was defensive coordinator at the Bengals and how the Vikings play now. Do you see them as a similar type team?
Absolutely. Mike Zimmer is a head coach I think a lot of us have got a lot of time for. If you've ever seen any of the Hard Knocks of which he's been involved in, he's great. He takes absolutely zero crap and gives absolutely zero Fs. So he gets his team sorted. The defense is, it's fast, it's young, it's aggressive. It takes the ball away from the opposition. It's Bengals light.
Dutton, the over-under for the Vikings is 9.5. Road games, Panthers, Titans, Eagles, Washington and the Jags. Home games in the new Viking Stadium, Giants, Texans, Cardinals, Cowboys and Colts. Try and say that fast.
I will take... I'm going to push. I'm going to say I'll push.
How can you push it 9.5, you div? It's impossible. What are you going to do? You're going to have a tie? Are you taking the tie? Is that what you're trying to tell me?
Yeah, I'm taking the tie.
9 wins and a tie.
I think they'll get to 10.
I see them as a wild card team, Dawn, at the moment. I know we're only one division into the NFC side of the previews, and we haven't done the AFC. But I see them as a playoff team. I think as a wild card team, I think they're going to need 10 or 11 victories for that. The new home stadium, I hope, will give them a boost. Road games against the Titans and the Eagles and Washington probably help them get above the 9.5.
Yeah, I'd go with that. I think, the new stadium, as I alluded to, when we spoke to Mr. Patra, which obviously people will hear, it's indoors. It's going to be more conducive to passing the ball. And North Turner, he likes to pass the ball.
Let's get on with it. Fantasy stud for the Minnesota Vikings.
It's bog standard and it's obvious. It's Adrian Peterson. It's not as obvious as it has been in past years. Peterson was good last year. He was, I think he led the league in rushing. Didn't run away with it though, if you'll pardon the pun. No, okay. I'll get my coat. He doesn't catch the ball. He's not used in passing, so he's not going to get you that additional volume that a Lev Bell or a Devonta Freeman or a Lamar Miller is going to give you. But he's going to get enough rushing attempts, you would assume, in this offense that he's going to justify RB1 status. So it's hard to look past them. They're going to run the ball a ton, and Peterson's going to get the bulk of the carries up to the fantasy playoffs.
And Dutton, fantasy dud.
Fantasy dud is Teddy Bridgewater. I mean, they just don't throw it enough. I mean, they were among the league's best teams at getting into the red zone last year, but they were among the league's worst when it came to scoring touchdowns. They had to settle for field goals. They couldn't. They had no consistent targets. Rudolph the Red Zone Reindeer didn't come up with the goods. The passing, the receiving core wasn't that good. Laquan Treadwell's come in now. He's a big body. He's an Anquan Bolden-esque. It must be the Q, the Juan part of the name that gives it to him. He's going to be a good target for Bridgewater in the red zone. It's just a question of, I just don't think he's going to throw enough. I don't think he's going to have to throw enough to be worth waiting for him or even taking him early. I think there'll be a lot more quarterbacks who probably aren't as good. But unfortunately, this is the difference between reality and fantasy football. We're all about numbers, and he's not going to put them up.
Minnesota Vikings, over under 9.5. Dutton pushed, as that's impossible. He's taken just over with the 10. I'm going to take the over as well. I see them as a playoff team. I've seen them as a playoff team, wildcard team. We will do a show which gives all of our predictions, and I hope I say that again later in this thing. Otherwise, I'll look really stupid when I pick like 3 wildcard teams. That's our thoughts on the NFC North. But, let's get on with a person who lives in that part of the world, who writes for the NFL, and that's Kevin Patra from around the NFL. The guy who churns out the most articles, it seems, and we'll get him on, see how Chicago's going, and see what he thinks of these 4 teams. And joining us now on waxandlyrical.com, we've got the brilliant Kevin Patra. Kevin has been writing for NFL.com since 2010. He's written roughly 6,000 posts, we think, in the last 2 months alone on the Around the NFL blog, for which he serves as one of the satellite correspondents from Chicago. He studied at both Michigan and USC, which means he's one of the few people on the planet to have rooted for both Jim Harbaugh and Pete Carroll. He's, as you know, a Detroit Lions sufferer. Kevin, welcome to the show.
How you doing, fellas? Appreciate you having me on.
Is it true that you have rooted for both Jim Harbaugh and Pete Carroll, and due to your college roots?
I guess, yeah, that's true in a sense. I guess I went to grad school at USC, so there wasn't so much rooting there. It was more like tangential rooting. Like, I didn't care if they lost or won. I mean, better for my friends that did have rooting interest there if they won, but if USC lost, it didn't really ruin my day. But I guess you could make that argument, yes, that I have rooted for both in a sense.
Is it a big, because I know a little bit of college football history, that obviously that's a Big Ten, Pac-10 rivalry kind of Rose Bowl. Is it common for people to move from Michigan to USC, even if it's for grad school at USC?
It is in a sense that a lot of people from Michigan that want to get into like film and stuff would go to like USC has like one of the best film schools in the world, and obviously Hollywood's right there. So there are a lot of Michigan alums in Los Angeles. If that answers your question. So yeah, it's not as uncommon as you think. There are more Michigan people here in Chicago than LA, but LA is probably destination number 2 or 3 outside of New York.
Well, I think when you mentioned Chicago, let's get on to it. We're doing a review of the NFC North, and we've got a few questions. Obviously, Detroit fan working in Chicago, so we're going to start with everybody's favorite team from those places, the Green Bay Packers. Would it be easy to assume that the Packers retake this division after a down season in 2015, or do you think it's more wide open than that in the NFC North?
I would actually give it to them fairly easily. I think they've improved. Getting Jordy Nelson back is no little matter. I think that's huge. It slots everybody else into their correct space, gets Randall Cobb back on a number 2 corner, and he can win one-on-one battles. I think the offensive line, when healthy, is one of the better ones, especially in the NFC. I think they've upgraded that. Young guys can come in and provide some backup if there is injuries again. I think Eddie Lacy, I'm one of the guys that are on the Eddie Lacy rebound year bandwagon. I think he's got his head on straight where he didn't last year. And I think that adding Jared Cook adds another dimension. So that offense is going to be great. And I think that getting Clay Matthews back on the outside is going to get more often. That's the hope this year. We'll get the pass rush, more consistency, and I think they've got a very cohesive secondary that gets overlooked a lot of times when you talk about the best secondaries in the NFL.
Is it surprising how much Jordy Nelson was missed? I mean, he's obviously been very productive for a number of years, but it might be just the thought, be that, well, it's just part of the, it's just the Green Bay system. Whereas we see when he wasn't there, just how much he was missed.
Yeah, I think he was often overlooked as one of the top 10 receivers in the NFL. For whatever reason, people, seem to credit Rodgers more and the system, as you said, more than anybody. But he proved last year when he wasn't there, the whole system got out of whack. There was no go-to guy on third down. There was no big plays on the sideline, which he missed a lot. They missed him a lot. So I think it proves that him as a player was on a national level as underrated, as you can probably get.
We moved to the team who actually won the division last year, the Minnesota Vikings. Do you think they're good enough on defense to, carry the team to contention? Or is this year maybe that the offense starts to live up to its end of the agreement?
I think their defense is going to be better this year. I think Anthony Barr is one of those guys that we had him in making the league last year, but I think we were a year early. I think he's going to be phenomenal, even better this year. I think this team just reminds me of the Bengals in the first couple of years when they were going to the playoffs with Andy Dalton. And that was a team that Mike Zimmer was on, and that defense kind of carried them. I think they do have enough on defense to carry them. The second safety spot is really the only weakness that I see on the whole roster. Maybe they don't have a dominant pass rusher a la Von Miller, but Everson Griffin can hold his own on the edge, and he wrecked some games against Seattle in the playoffs. He was just dominant, and he almost won that. They should have won that game, and he was dominant in that game. So I think they do have enough on defense, and I think that is what's going to carry them. On offense, I think Laquan Treadwell, that addition, if he's fully healthy after, he was banged. People forgot that he had a devastating injury in 2014 and still played all of college last year. So I think that he's going to add a different dimension, but it's really going to still rely on Adrian Peterson being able to carry the load. I think that people underestimate what Teddy Bridgewater brings to the table. Yes, the ceiling might be lower than on other flashy quarterbacks, but we've seen quarterbacks win in the NFL, win playoff games with a dominant defense, a dominant run game, and making some big throws, which I think he can in the clutch.
So I suppose the question is, you brought up the Bengals, Kevin, in comparison. Obviously, Zim is a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
Are we saying you think this is the Vikings are Bengals, but you think that Bridgewater's got a higher ceiling than Dalton had in his first few years?
I think in his first few years, I think Dalton made a lot of strides last year, and I think that we keep tapping Teddy Bridgewater, and we forget that he's still young. He still has a ways to learn, and he didn't really have a go-to receiver last year. Let's give him and Treadwell some time, Stephon Diggs some time to grow. I mean, Mike Wallace was mediocre, and that's being kind, honestly, so I don't swear. I mean, he really didn't have anything to go to. I think the unsung hero on the offense that we often forget about is going to be Jerick McKinnon. Once Adrian Peterson starts slowing down, I think McKinnon has that backup flashiness, speed, athleticism, and he can have a big role in the pass game. I think that's somebody to look for down the line near the end of the year when they're trying to save Adrian for the playoff run.
And obviously as well, they're going to have 9 games at least in a dome, so that's going to be more conducive to passing. So they're not going to have to just give it to Adrian or Jerick McKinnon to pound the rock. They can let Teddy let it loose occasionally.
Absolutely. I think that's also an underline. I think Norv Turner might, open up the offense, be more willing to open up the offense when you're not playing in 5-degree weather.
A team that seems to be getting a fair amount of love for moves he's done this season is the team of the city you're in, the Chicago Bears.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see them becoming a legitimate contender? Because as everyone knows, John Fox has a penchant for getting to the Super Bowl in year 2.
Right. Yeah, I don't think they're going to make that big of a leap, but I do think they're going to get back to more respectability, if you will. That 9-7, 8-8 type of team that can knock off, maybe knock off the Packers, but they might also lose a game they should win. I think it's really going to depend on Jay Cutler and how Darryl Logan, replaces Adam Gase. I mean, Adam Gase coached one of the best years out of Jay Cutler because he put him into situations where Jay didn't have to do too much thinking. Make the quick pass, get the ball out of your hands. Don't do too much where you have to force. And he still made some of the bonehead errors, but he negated a lot more than we've seen in the past. So I think that's going to play a key role on how that offense shapes up.
I mean, it's going to be difficult for Loggins because obviously he hasn't really done anything since, Danger Zone or Footloose. Or was that Kenny Loggins? Sorry.
So, Kevin, on the offensive coordinator thing, how are the Chicago people reacting to not having Adam Gase? Because there was a lot of he kind of controlled Jay more than had done in the past. Are people now fearful that we may go back to old bad Jay, so to speak?
You know what? Surprisingly, for as much Jay Cutler hate as I heard last year, there's actually kind of optimism that I think people understood that Gase was going to be a head coach. I think that was pretty much understood when he took the job last year, that sooner or later he was going to leave, and it appeared, obviously it was sooner. But I think the thought around the city, from the people that I've spoken to at least, the fans that I spoke to, there's some sort of optimism that maybe it finally clicked with Jay, that he doesn't have to do it all. Now, the big question is going to be at running back. Can you count on Jeremy Langford the way you did at Forte a few years ago? Is it going to be, is Kareem Terry and rookie Jordan Howard, how big of a role are they going to play? Is it going to be a committee role? Is Jeremy Langford have the skill? I mean, he had 3.4 yards per carry when he broke it down last year. So he really flashed that big of a deal. But I think it's going to be a question of how does the whole balance out? How does Loggins balance out the offense? I mean, you have potentially very good weapons at wide receiver. Alshon Jeffrey probably play under the franchise tag in my estimations for this year. Kevin White, we don't know. He didn't play down last year, but he looked great coming out of college. So there's a different weapon. And Eddie Royal, when healthy, proved that he could be a good slot receiver. So you have three receivers that you can spread the ball around. I think that there's optimism throughout the city that this can be a better team than last year. I believe that it's going to make the leap this year. I think they're 2 or 3 years away.
It is, when it comes to Cutler, it is the hope that does kill you.
Yes, exactly. It's the hope that he's learned that he doesn't have to win by himself. And I feel like there was a lot of people who thought that he did that in the past, and maybe he's grown up from that.
So, last but by no means least, your Detroit Lions. We'll start with you. We'll start with your head first. What would be a reasonably successful season for the Lions in your head?
Oh, successful, I think, is if they make it to 8-8. Personally, I look at the roster and with Calvin Johnson gone, in my estimation, this is an offense that is banking on Jim Bob Cooter keeping the magic that was the end of last year, and an offensive line that was shaky, getting a rookie left tackle to play above par, and a running back who's coming in Amir Abdullah, who's coming off of shoulder surgery. And as we've seen in the past, guys that come off shoulder, it might take 12 to 15 games for them to be right. It might take a whole season. Doug Martin was a great example a couple of years ago. He struggled because he was coming off a shoulder injury. He didn't want to hit anybody. It's just a natural reaction, and it took him a year after, and then in 2015 he busted out again. So they don't really have answers at running back. They have good pieces. Golden Tate, Marvin Jones. I think this is the year Eric Ebron finally shuts all the haters up. Personally, if I was a fantasy guy, that's where I would be leaning on my late round tight end. And Theo Riddick obviously is explosive, but that's, again, out of the backfield. He's a pass catcher. So I think the running back situation is very, very shaky at this moment as we sit right now in July.
So if that's where that's where your heart, that's where your head is telling you. Obviously, we'll stay clear of what the heart says because as fans, we know the difference between head and heart is often leagues apart. How much pressure? It's because at times last season and before the late season shit, before the time of Cooter, as it were, Jim Caldwell looked like a dead man walking, and obviously the late season surge made it more likely to carry on. How much pressure is he under if the Lions go 6-10, 5-11, something like that? Is it likely he'll get the boot?
I think so. I think that one of the reasons that it kept him is if you look at the timing of when they hired Bob Quinn, the new general manager, it was kind of late in the process. I think he didn't want to fire Caldwell and be stuck hiring a new guy that he was only, mildly interested in. I think he wanted to get his guy, and he had the excuses, like you said, they played phenomenally well at the end on offense with Jim Bob Cooter. You fire Caldwell, there goes Cooter. I think he decided, safest to let him try again. I mean, Caldwell is, a Magoo type of guy. I don't think he's not offending anyone. I personally never liked to hire in the first place when the Lions brought him in. I don't think he's that great of a coach, but his assistants in Cooter and Terrell Austin are phenomenal in my estimation. So I think it was let him have another year. If they poop out, if they go 5-11, 6-10, then Quinn has an excuse to clean house, bring in one of his guys, whether that's one of the Patriots coordinators or not. I'm not even going to get into that speculation, but I think it kind of gave him an excuse to let it go a year, see what happens, and then if they do bad again, he's got an excuse to wipe out and get his own guys in there. I just think it was a timing thing, was a big reason behind it. The Patriots in their playoffs at the time, all that sort of thing. I think that had, in my estimation, not being able to talk to anyone in the building, that's how I read the situation.
I mean, obviously Caldwell, it's such an emotional character. You have to, you have to let that wave of emotion run its course, I suppose.
Oh yeah, he kills me.
The final question from us, Ken, before we let you go. Obviously, we know the guys in LA get the sun. They get to sit together and watch games on a Sunday, and then do the show do the ATM podcast. Obviously you're in Chicago. It's not 70 and sunny in Chicago in December. Let's not beat around the bush here. What is your game day routine, assuming that Greg hasn't got you writing another 5,000 articles for the website?
You know what? It's funny. Me and Connor usually are tasked with covering the morning shows, which is usually mediocre banter by former players and, a few Ian Rappaport reports, writing injury posts. So I usually get up on a Sunday morning at about 5 a.m. my time. And, I'm working and I do the morning shows, and then I cover one game, one or two games, depending on what the slate of games is. Usually in the middle of the season, it kind of, with buys and stuff, it lowers. But, cover one game. It's usually an NFC North game because that's what's on TV around here, Bears or Vikings or Packers game is usually how it goes. And then, I file my story for that game, and then I watch the afternoon games, and then I watch the night games, because I got to get up on Monday morning and write more about, some games I haven't seen full of and stuff like that. So Sundays during the season are a grind. At least those guys get to sleep in a little bit, even though they whine about being late at the podcast. At least they're not waking up at 6 a.m. to write about, some splash report on a morning television show.
Yeah, I think if they're looking for sympathy of living in LA during the winter,
they're not
I don't think they're going to find it from yourself or from me and Neil over in England.
No,
absolutely
not.
Okay. Kevin, thanks a lot for your time. We really appreciate it. Great to have you on the show, and we hope to have you on again soon.
Oh, absolutely. Have a good one, guys. Appreciate it.
Well, that was the brilliant Kevin Patra there, giving us the East Coast side of around the NFL. It's not quite as sunny. It's not quite as warm, and you have to get up earlier.
Who'd have thought that Chicago was colder than LA?
No, I know, but you're just like, oh no, we had to stay up really late to record our podcast in Los Angeles. Sorry, guys. No offense. Love you all. No sympathy from anyone here. It's not happening in this lifetime or the next.
No. When they have to try and get to work on Merseyrail, they can have some sympathy.
Exactly. Don't know Greater Anglian or whatever it's called, which is even worse than Merseyrail, if that's even possible. So that was our first of our NFL previews. It was the NFC North. We went through it. We talked about over-unders, as we always do. We talked about your fantasy studs and fantasy duds. I quite like that name. I know you're not too keen, but we'll work on it. Have you got anything else before we go?
No, not really. I've been quite busy the last couple of weeks. I've got lots of articles that I've written and tweeted out for various publications. So if you want anyone who wants to read them, retweet, share with your friends, share with your enemies, I don't care. Just read them. I need the clicks.
He needs the clicks. We need the comments and reviews on iTunes. Go to Waxing Lyrical with Mains and Duts and find out. Put our comments in. Put some star ratings. We like 5-star ratings, but you know what? You can put what you wish.
Yeah, we'll just if you don't give us 5, we'll just blank you next time we see you on the street.
This has been Waxing Lyrical. Get used to it.